was abroad. Do you think the trip to Boston kind of ignited that idea of going out of Kenya at some point?
Very much so. I was open. I was not like limited to Europe only. So I wanted to go, even if it was South Africa. By that time, I'd already applied for the Mandela Rhodes scholarship, had gotten towards until the last step, but didn't make it through. But the trip contributed in the following ways. So during the Modern United Nations, you are in caucuses with people from different universities, call it Yale, some from the UK, some from Harvard. And for me, it was the way, like, we're all young, 21, 20, and we're out there like fully dressed in like official, and people spending their nights just thinking, and like, you're trying to emulate and reenact the UN and solve world issues. And I remember first feeling out of place and feeling like I don't have what it takes to like be at par with these people. I remember by the time I came back to Kenya, leaving the place and feeling I want to be able to match up. I want to be able to stand on a global stage and feel that I have what it takes to contribute. So that's where my journey to graduate school started. Also, after the trip, I was tasked with documenting the trip since its start. So I wrote a report, and during the report I had to interview people who had done the trip for the first time. And that's how I met two people who had studied in Oxford, and one of them was actually happy to meet me. Beautiful thing is they were both in Kenya. They were both happy to meet me, so we met with one of them, and the other we had a call because they were traveling. And I remember them telling me their story, telling me what GPA they had, and I was like, wait, you guys' profile sounds like mine, like I can also do this. And they were so encouraging. They sent me the documents. One further took me out for breakfast, and she further introduced me to like more resources. And when I finally got shortlisted for Rhodes Scholarship, they introduced me to other Rhodes scholars who'd gotten the scholarship to talk to. So lots of synchronicity. And if there's a reflection I have is sometimes you just have to take the first step and the other steps show up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also reflect back to that time in campus, and I'd gotten an international opportunity as well. But also I encourage my students, the students that I mentor, I encourage them to take even local trips, like just take a bus somewhere to another country never gone to, or even regional. I think East Africa community, we don't need even a passport to travel. But I normally encourage my students to manifest, like to just get the passport. You never know, like just apply for that passport and then take yourself on a weekend trip to Dar, to Kampala, to Kigali. It's just a way of just opening up your mind. I've come to really appreciate the power of traveling, or really taking yourself out of your comfort zone, be it location-wise or anything. So let's change things and let's move to Rhodes Scholarship and your journey towards UK, in particular Oxford. And that is where you and I actually met. Do you remember the first one we talked on phone?
Yeah, we talked after I'd been shortlisted, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember a friend again telling me, okay, so I had people, I thank people who've always been in my journey, So she was like, go online, search on LinkedIn, look at people who've gotten the scholarship before. And I go online and I say, Gladys Getich. I reach out to her and she responds, and you respond. And I remember you telling me, giving me your number, I think, and I gave you my number and you called me directly. I was doing a project with one of the for one of our Out of the Streets Foundation project events, and I remember you called me, and I remember looking for a quiet space to sit down, and we talked for, it was almost like 2 hours, and I don't know, like the rest is history. Yeah, you're really encouraging. If there's one thing that stood out for me was embracing authenticity, even as I approached the interviews, and that really took me far. So again, synchronicity.
I called you and you were really, you were genuine and honest. You were scared and anxious, and it reminded me of how I was feeling on that day when I was preparing for the interview. But even before we get there, how did you know about Rhodes Scholarship? And so define, what is this Rhodes Scholarship? And also, I think this is an opportunity because you are an ambassador, East African ambassador for scholarship. Yeah. So what the heck is this thing? And in Kenya particularly, they select 2 students every year. So just I want you to wear your ambassador's role and talk about scholarship in general, and then we will shift gears, and then you will take us back to when you were applying.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so as you've mentioned, I am currently one of the Rhodes East Africa ambassadors, and my role entails conducting outreach in universities in East Africa and sharing with students and prospective applicants more about the Rhodes Scholarship, what it is, what the application process looks like, almost demystifying this scholarship, which sometimes feels inaccessible. Yeah, so through my work, I travel to different universities, and I'm open. If someone would be keen for me to visit the universities, they just should reach out to me. So I visit a couple universities, meet students, share, and I think that's how opportunities are normally learned, by just hearing other people talk about them. And I think the ambassador role there, the fact that I did the scholarship myself, I got the scholarship and I studied in Oxford here, adds to it. So the Rhodes Scholarship has, of course, as you can tell from the name, is named after Cecil Rhodes, a man who has an interesting and contradictory past and background. So he owned a diamond business in Rhodesia, what's now Zimbabwe, and Southern Africa, and really controlled the market there, really a colonialist. And by the time of his death, he left a will in which he contributed a lot of cash towards the founding of the scholarship. And the initial goal of the scholarship was to fund young white men to come into Oxford and get an amazing and the best training so that they could go and further expand and grow the territories, the colonies. A lot has happened since early 1900s when this scholarship was founded, and right now we have women, we have Black people, we have Africans who are part of the scholarship, and it's changed in terms of its objective. I know it has a contradictory founder, but the amount of work that the scholars have gone ahead to do is incredible. The scholarship grants you 2 years funding to come into Oxford to study anything of your choice. There's limits though, very little limits on what you cannot study, but it's for graduate study. And the 2 years you can do either 2 masters, so what I did, or like Gladys, like you did, came in directly to do a PhD, of which they'll fund the extra year depending on which field you're coming from. Yeah, I hope that gives an overview. And they have an age limit though. That's the only catch with the Rhodes Scholarship. You need not to have turned 25 by the time you're making an application. But there is exemptions for different study and also different backgrounds.
Okay, nice. Thank you for giving that overview. Now let's go back to when you were applying. How did you get to know about it? And then walk us just briefly through the journey of applying and getting shortlisted, and then winning the scholarship in, was it 2018? 17. Okay.
Yeah, you win it 1 year before you join.
Yeah.
So I learned about the Rhodes Scholarship through a website called Opportunities for Africans. I think it showed up on my Facebook. Social media isn't bad. I still once in a while go in to check what opportunities are there. Actually, that's how I got some of my traveling gigs. And events when I was in undergrad. So I applied and I saw it there.
But sorry, Ruthie, how did you know about the link, the website, Opportunities for Africans?
Friends. There's a friend who shared it with me. Yeah.
Okay.
I see it and I'm like, that time I was looking. So here's the thing: when you're looking, you'll certainly find what you're looking for, and many other things you're not looking for.
Yes.
So I see it and I'm like, okay. Like until then, I knew Oxford as the set, the mathematical set, and the dictionary. I hadn't thought of Oxford in the UK, and so I see it, and then at the same time, that's when I'm writing this report, and at the same time, that's when I'm speaking to people who've gone to Oxford. Again, for me, I don't think some things happen by mistake. I think they're divine, and that's when I get scared of not starting, because when you don't start, you'll not trigger the things to happen. Anyway, let me move from my explaining side. So I see that at the same time I'm doing this research for the Harvard Model United Nations, I meet 2 students who studied in Oxford. So it's becoming real, you know? They're confirming that this thing actually happens. When I mention to them, they say, it's slightly competitive, but tell me, what GPA did you have? And they're like, yeah, send in an application, you have what it takes. So I mentioned to my mentors, I had power of networks also. That's something I'm slowly going back to. So I mentioned to 2 of my professors who are really invested in me and in my intellectual growth and academic work. So I mentioned to them, I write serious emails to them, and not serious, but I tell them, I found these opportunities, and I was requesting whether you can write me a recommendation letter. So the deadline for Rhodes tends to be August, the last day of August. And I think I was sending this to them in April of 2017. So letting them know early on that I'd be asking for recommendation. I gave up almost 20 times when I was making the application. First, I didn't tell many people that I was applying. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell. I only told one friend and my mentors. Yeah. Why didn't I share with people? Sometimes I think I want to try out things in silence before letting them out. And it's something I'd slowly lost sight of, but right now I'm going back to. And it's not like I'm closing everybody off. Specific people I let into. And there's a book I'm reading right now. I've been reading for a while. It's called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. She talks of wet blankets. So wet blankets are, I don't know whether you've ever had this, like, you know, you wreck a moment, like, hey, I want to write this article. And then you tell someone, like, no, that cannot work. I know of someone who tried it out and it did not even work. And they're telling you of someone who tried it out, not them. And your idea dies like that.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. So as you mentioned, you have people who, like, maybe the moment you mentioned about writing the book, like, they flew with you, you know, and not in a way that chokes you out. So I look out for such people. And sometimes you do it through trial and error. Sometimes you'll not know people are wet blankets until you try. For example, I don't know I forget the name she calls of people who are not wet blankets. I'll call it a warm blanket. I think for me, not blanket brings in the choking idea. But for me, people who nourish some of my ideas, for example, are my sister. And every time I want to make like a big plunge financially, or when it comes to taking care of myself, I call my sister. And I'm like, I want to buy this thing. And she's like, go for it, you know? If it's a job I'm applying for or something, these friends who I reach out to, and I know they'll literally hold my hand till the end, you know? So, and I also want to do the same for others. So I think we were talking about Rhodes. That's why I didn't mention it to so many people, because first I'd been applying for jobs. I was graduating. I was gonna graduate. That's April. I'd finished my studies. I was graduating that September. I was in a state of precarity, not aware of what my next is gonna look like. I was feeling quite despondent also because things weren't lining up for me the way I thought they would. Anyway, so I was staying with my grandmother at that time, and I had my own till today, like, she creates a room for me when I go, and she say, like, I put a table for you and all this. So I used to work interestingly. She has these nice cups, you know, the olden ones that from long time ago. So I'd make really strong coffee for myself.
Yeah.
And I'd work into the night, reading, exploring, searching as much as I can about Rhodes, and then develop. It took me time to write. I'm a slow writer. During the days I'd sleep, and she was understanding of my routine. But there's months I gave up on Rhodes. Like, there's months I'd go without looking at the application. Maybe that was the beauty of starting early. But it's these people who are told, my mentors, who would be like, hey, when did you say I need to write that letter? And I'd wake up again and start writing. So that was my process. And so
Why were you losing focus with it? Was it like, did you feel like you didn't have what it takes to be a scholar?
I felt like I had what it takes in terms of grades and all that, but it was like, is it worth going for? I never knew someone who was a Rhodes Scholar before. So I was almost moving with ignorance and not knowing. I didn't know how big the Rhodes Scholarship was. So I didn't have that pressure. So, like, oh, you know, this thing is massive. Thousands of people apply for it and they don't get it. So I think I didn't have that anxiety. So sometimes I just get tired because again, it calls for lots of self-reflection and introspection to be able to develop really strong letters. Like I had to do lots of academic research also for me to come up with a strong case for why refugee studies or why the field I was going into. So I gave up a couple of times. Yeah, I submit on 31st. We have 31st of August. That's when my personal statement was ready. Yeah, I graduate the next month. October, I get shortlisted. November, I do the interview. That's when my parents knew. They're like, what is this? Like, because I used to just like checking my Gmail once in a while. And after this, I need to open my email and check the message I received. And they're like, wait. And so the celebration, I remember going to bus station to buy like, secondhand clothing. My mom had bought me this nice pencil skirt, like a black one. I bought some nude shoes, like heels. My sister had bought me a handbag, my first handbag, and probably my last. I've not had a handbag in a while. For my graduation, I bought a coat, a grey one, and a top that I put inside. So I washed these clothes and had them hung, waiting for my interview. At that time, I was talking to people like you, who really psyched me up and prepared. My mentors also. Yeah. The next day, I get the call that I had been selected, and the journey towards preparing for Oxford started.